Topic 7.9 is the review topic for Unit 7. The AP reasoning skill that's focused in this topic is causation, and so we're looking at causation in global conflict. The essential question we're answering in this topic is what caused global conflicts in the first half of the 20th century. We'll now review each of the key concepts that is recommended for review by the College Board. Key Concept 6.1 says that rapid advances in science and technology altered the understanding of the universe and of the natural world and led to advances in communication, transportation, industry, agriculture, and medicine. In the context of global conflict, what this really meant, more often than not, were increases in war casualties, and this was true of both World War I and World War II. Remember, one specific innovation of this time period was trench warfare, where two sides essentially lined up in dugout trenches and fought each other over long, protracted, terrible periods of time. Other technology that you would want to know from the two world wars are artillery, railways, better communications technology, aircraft, which improved over the two wars, tanks and other vehicles, which also improved, ships and submarines, which also improved, grenades, flamethrowers, also poison gas, and then two World War II innovations that you should know about are firebombing and the atomic bomb. Key Concept 6.1 is specifically relevant to topics 7.3 and 7.7. Key Concept 2 is that peoples and states around the world challenge the existing political and social order in varying ways, leading to unprecedented worldwide conflicts. Some of the causes of early 20th century conflicts include imperialist expansion and ambitions, competition over limited resources. In World War I, remember, a flawed alliance system played in. In World War II, unsustainable peace treaties and economic depression were involved. In both wars, intense and growing nationalism were important factors as well. Remember, out of both world wars and generally during the 20th century, you also had the rise of anti-imperial regional resistance movements, specific extremist groups that rose to power and committed atrocities, and those atrocities included genocide and other ethnic violence. New ideologies that emerged during the 20th century were reforms to Western capitalism, which were encapsulated in FDR's New Deal. You also had Soviet communism, which was first led by Lenin and then Stalin. You had corporate fascism, which started in Italy under Mussolini and then spread to Germany, before Germany completed its transition into a totalitarian, fascist, militaristic state known as Nazi Germany. Specific topics that are relevant to this key concept are topics 7.2, 7.4, 7.5, 7.6, and 7.8. Key Concept 6.2.1 says that the West dominated the global political order at the beginning of the 20th century, but both land-based and maritime empires gave way to new states by the century's end. And yes, at the start of the 1900s, the map was largely dominated by the West, and also Japan, which you may or may not consider to be part of the West. And that was true through the early part of the 19th century. But transitions that did lead to specific new states, of course, include revolutions in the Americas before we even get into the 1900s, particularly revolutions away from Iberian states. You also had the Commonwealth from the British government or the British Empire that started developing at this time, where you had dominions in Canada, Australia, New Zealand, and later South Africa, achieving different levels of sovereignty and eventually, during the 20th century, independence. You also had the Balkan nationalist movements that we talked about before World War I that were a part of the breakup of the Ottoman Empire. Decolonization of European empires in Africa and Asia has been discussed a little bit, but it will be a topic of discussion as we move forward as well. Philippine independence was realized in 1946. That's independence from United States rule, of course. Indian independence happened a year later with their independence from British rule. And another important state to know about is the state of Israel, which was established in what we would call the Middle East, specifically in the Palestine region in 1948. Specific topics that are relevant to this key concept include 7.1 and 7.5. Key concept 6.2.1.a says that the older land-based Ottoman, Russian, and Qing empires collapsed due to a combination of internal and external factors. These changes in Russia eventually led to communist revolution. So the important transitions that we're talking about here are really the Ottoman Empire's transition into the Republic of Turkey, the Qing dynasty, which transitioned first to the Republic of China, and then later to the People's Republic of China, the communist state that exists today, but with the kind of asterisk that the Republic of China still does exist in a sense. The Russian Empire's transition to becoming the USSR is the last example here from the CED. I want to take this opportunity, though, just to highlight communist revolutions generally during the 20th century, so you kind of have an inventory of them. So obviously, Russia to the USSR is the first on this list. North Vietnam becoming the Democratic Republic of Vietnam, and then in the 70s achieving unification and Vietnam becoming communist is another one to know. North Korea's transition to the Democratic People's Republic of Korea, which is still North Korea, in 1946 is another example, although today they probably would say that they're not communist anymore either. They've kind of developed their own ideology. China's transition to the People's Republic of China, as we discussed, is another example, and one we'll learn more about. The Cuban Revolution shortly thereafter is a good one to know, as well as the revolution in Laos. Specific topics in Unit 7 that are relevant to this key concept include 7.1 and 7.4. Key concept 6.2.2.d says that states around the world challenge the existing political and social order, including the Mexican Revolution that arose as a result of political crisis. And the bottom line here is simply that there were challenges to existing political and social orders within states. That included some new social and political ideas like the expansion of rights and liberties generally, and that was discussed in the constitutions of the Ottoman Empire, Mexico, Brazil, and others, of course the United States before, France as well. This time also saw the expansion of worker rights and better protections for labor and better wages. As the map at the end of the 20th century suggests, there was a rejection, at least in part, of Western dominance of the world, and for a brief period of time there was the spread of totalitarian systems across the map. Lastly, globalization and decolonization will really be topics that we'll talk about as we move forward into Units 8 and 9, but they are relevant here and merit mention. Specific 20th century revolutions you should know about are the Mexican Revolution, the Russian Revolution, the Brazilian Revolution, the Spanish Civil War, which led to a period of totalitarianism that lasted until the 1970s, and the Chinese Civil War, which led to the People's Republic of China, which is still the government of China. Specific topics that are relevant to this key concept are 7.1 and 7.5.